Welcome, everybody. This is Ray of RebelEars.com. Want to thank everybody for listening to the podcast on Anchor.fm/RebelEars and also watching the YouTube channel. So a few things we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about the magical equipment. This was actually a recent post by Henry with the 3. He was talking about there's no magical gear that will give you the perfect sound every time. The next thing we also going to be talking about is branching out, going to different events. And then we also going to be talking about Pour Up Sip, who's a dope producer. So the first thing I really want to talk about is like Henry with the 3. So a lot of people try to figure out when you're recording, what's the magical equipment? You know, you got to think of it this way. You got to invest in, your equipment. You got to figure out exactly what's going to work for your room, or if you go to a studio, what equipment you can learn from. So you got to think of it this way. Of course, you're going to start out with a microphone, right? With me, I use the TLM 102. That's a Neumann microphone, and I am very, very satisfied with the microphone. I really want the Neumann U87 in the near future, but the thing about it is, you got to invest in what you can. So the TLM 102 is a $700 mic. I know a lot of people don't have the budget like that. I really want a Manley reference cardioid mic. That's a $2,700 microphone. But you got to invest in yourself slowly. Like I started off with a MXL 990 and that was a $100 mic. But the thing about it was I learned the characteristics. I learned the flat frequency response. But the thing is, you guys slowly learn the equipment that you're using, right? So when it comes to that, I love basically just using equipment that I can learn from, like interning at Castle Hill Studios. They have, their vocal chain at Castle Hill Studios with the TubeTech CL1B, that's a compressor, and the Neve 1073, that's an EQ. So from the vocal chain, from the EQ and the compressor, it goes straight into, well, matter of fact, from the microphone in the A room, they had the Sony C800. So that right there is a $10,000 microphone. Now that's a big budget. But when it comes to the vocal chain, it was the Sony C800 to the Neve 1073, which was also a preamp. It's an EQ and a preamp. And then it goes to the TubeTech CL1B, which is a compressor. And then it went into Pro Tools, right? And the thing that people got to understand, every artist is not going to have the same tone. So you got to do like different characteristics. Like you got to think of it this way. Okay, so you have one artist that has like a very bass tone voice, and you have another artist that's very high pitch. So you're going to EQ them differently because, if you have both of them with the same compression, the same EQ, everything the same, one's going to sound natural, like full, and sound like high quality, and one might sound thin or too bright. So you got to think of it that way. A lot of people are thinking like you slap a plug-in on, you slap an EQ, a compressor, put some reverb, delay, and you're set. And then what happened, people are disappointed not taking the time to actually learn the artist's voice, right? So Henry with the 3 actually posted talking about there's no magical equipment that'll give you the best quality mix or quality recorded every time, because you got to learn your voice, because your voice is an instrument itself. So it might even be from, the microphone you're using. I know that Henry, he has the Slate Digital VMS, and that is a dope microphone because it has emulation. So you can pick up to I think 12 to 15 different mic settings. I know they have the Sony C800 emulation on there, but he told me he used the Telefunken, which is a very popular microphone itself. He did tests with different artists, and he told me from, the multiple emulations on the Slate Digital, the Telefunken was the best. So with that being said, you always want to take the time to just, figure out exactly before the session even start. If you're an engineer, a recording engineer, if you have an artist in the session, take 5 to 10 minutes just to learn the artist's voice. Like when I say that, take time to do some quick rough takes. So tell them okay, just walk in the vocal booth. We're going to do a practice run. Even a practice run might be a hit, because a lot of people thinking okay, as soon as I do a couple of rough takes, I'm going to go ahead and go all in. No. The best thing an engineer can do, a recording engineer can do, tell the artist they're not recorded. I just want to hear how you sound. I'm not recording. Because what happens, an artist is going to get comfortable just going off the rip, just random. And then what people don't realize is when you're not being judged, you're more comfortable. I tell a lot of people, like, you got to be uncomfortable to be comfortable. So when I say that, you got to think outside of, people going to judge you automatically. Like right now, I'm on Instagram Live. Thank y'all for everybody who's watching. I'm recording a podcast for YouTube, and I really want to bring value to people, because what happens, a lot of people are judged daily. Like me, I know I'm going to be judged by, okay, well, he talks about this and that, but I don't really agree with it. You don't really have to agree. But the thing is, I really want to bring value to people who actually record, mix, master, perform, network. It's a lot that goes into music. A lot of people only think about the music. You got to think about the business too, right? So when it comes to that, you got to think of it this way. If you're an engineer, you have limitations. A lot of engineers feel like, oh, well, I'm recording, I'm mixing, so I should put my input. No. The thing you got to think about, if you're a recording engineer, you're getting paid for your time. You're not getting paid for your input. You're getting paid to press record. You actually getting paid to push record, but that's not just, saying that that's all I do, because even though I'm pressing record, I'm tracking. So basically tracking means while recording, I'm doing effects, editing, doing mixing, right? And a lot of people, you got to be quick, because there's so many engineers out there, and you got to think of it this way. If you really want to be successful in the music industry, you got to be what I classify myself back then when I was in the studio days in, days out while I was interning, a studio rat. So a studio rat is basically, well, that's what I call myself back then, because I was doing like interning for like 6 hours at a time. And then I was doing sessions for 8 hours. So I was spending up to like 14 to 16 hours a day in the studio, not leaving. The only time I left was probably to get something from the store, get something to eat. But, there was sessions back to back, and I learned from other engineers I work with. And, even interning is a beneficial deal, but even with that, if you're going to intern, learn the equipment, because I have my own home studio, and I'm thankful for what I learned from Castle Hill Studio. Shout out Dan and Max. It helped me to understand the different harmonics with microphones, because you can have the two same microphones and one might be off. So good example, if you have two of the same mics, one is 5 years old and one is only like a couple of weeks old, right? The 5-year-old microphone will have more characteristics than the 2-week-old. Well, it depends, because, the more you use a microphone, you'll understand, like, when I raise it up this frequency, I get this sound. But if I curve this out around like 1,000 or 2K, it depends, because the more you use equipment, the more you understand it, right? And I learned from Henry that every mic is not the same. Just like I explained, you can have two of the same mics. One can be older, one can be new, and you'll get like different characteristics of the microphones, right? So that's one thing, right? Now we also going to be talking about with Henry with the 3. He was talking about with plugins, right? You can't have the same plugins for every artist. Like with me, I have a consistent template, but my template is different depending on if I have a trap artist, if I have an R&B artist, if I have a country singer. You got to think of it this way. Everybody's not going to be the same. Just like with in a rock band, the drums are going to be louder than the instruments, right? With pop, everything is bright. Everything is bright. With trap, the drum's going to be hitting, the vocal's going to stand out. The instrument is going to be there, but you got to think of it this way. Every genre is different, especially when it comes to mixing. Don't mix the same, don't record the same. Every artist you record, you should take time to sit down and say, you know what? Let's figure out your unique sound, because after you figure out their unique sound, you have a template. So a template is basically like, okay, let's say you're working with an artist for the first time, right? You record them and you be like, you know what? I like this take. Let's do it again, right? And then their natural sound with the vocal chain that you provided sounds amazing. So the next time they have a session, you don't even have to build a new preset or anything else, because you already have the template from the last session, right? So that's a big thing. Save a template. Okay, because what happens, a lot of people will like look from one session, and then when they do another session, they be like, dang, I got to figure out how they're going to sound. Like, you got to be ahead of the curve. So think about it that way, right? And when it comes to the plugins or outboard gear you use, I say depending on how much you have, start off with the stock plugins. So with Pro Tools, I love the EQ. I use the EQ. I actually learned from Steve Hibicki. And one thing I learned from him, just because you have the top quality plugins doesn't mean that it's going to sound right. You got to use what you know how to use. But even with that, you still should venture off and use a new plugin time and time. You don't just want to be stagnant and comfortable with just using what you're comfortable with, right? So always think of what you can do to build, what you can go to reach to the next step. Because I learned a lot from Ransom 2, because every session was different engineers, different artists, different recording and mixing engineers, right? They all had the same master engineer, because after everything is done, they get sent to the same master engineer, so everything sound level. But what I learned, every artist use different plugins, so you got to step out of your comfort zone, especially if you want to be a mixing engineer. Now, recording engineer and mixing engineer, in my opinion, are totally different, because the thing is, a recording engineer, they're comfortable with the plugins they're using, they have it set up, and then when they're done with the session, they just send it to the mixing engineer. Now, the mixing engineer, they got a lot to do. You got to think of it this way. Like with Leslie Braithwaite, when he did Cardi B's Money track, right? Shout out to Leslie Braithwaite. He records at Patchwork Studios. So from Leslie Braithwaite, from working with Gucci Mane, Outkast, TLC, like his credits is amazing. So with Money track, he was talking about how he I'm trying to remember if it was a compressor or if it was a plugin he was talking about. I think it was the R compressor. I'm trying to remember. I don't know if it was that, but he was talking about like he actually goes through different artists' plugins, right? Like the engineer plugins that they use for the track. He tried his best not to take it away, because the thing you got to understand, if you're an engineer, right, a mixing engineer, the artist is comfortable with, to an extent, they're comfortable with how the rough mix sound when they record it in the studio, right? They like, oh, I like this sound. This is how I want it. I just want it to sound bigger, fuller, right? That's the words they use. So bigger and fuller. So you got to think of it this way. How you going to make it bigger and how you going to make it fuller? So the thing you got to think about, like with the plugins they're using, like, is it peaking? Are all the vocals, are they in their own placements? Like, one thing I'm big on, especially when it comes to vocals, I like to pan. So let's say, of course, the lead vocal is straight in the middle, right? Your ad-libs, depending on how many ad-libs you have, you probably want to pan left, right? If you're going to do that, you got to think of it this way. Like the left, I might do 24. The right, I might do 24, just to bring it like close enough that you could hear the lead vocal, but the ad-libs are just spacious enough. Now, when it comes to like the hook, like that gotta be like, it's gotta surround you, right? Because the hook supposed to be big, it's supposed to capture you. So with the hook, honestly, I might do something simple as like the left part, the right part, like 50. It depends, I really don't have a certain range when it comes to panning, because every track, like I say, is different, but you want to be to the point every track is different. From even the reverbs you put, how much reverb do you want it to sound ominous? Do you want it to sound eerie, spacious? With the delay, do you want it to be like continuous through the whole verse? Do you want it to be parts of the ad-libs? Things like that you got to think about, right? And I just love mixing, because you learned a lot about an artist when you're mixing, because the word can stand out and you just want to bring it out more. And you got to think of it this way. If you're going to bring them out more, what parts is really going to set the tone? Especially with the hooks, because you want to capture people with the hook. Like one secret that I remember, okay, so this is a tip from Black Beatles with Ray Shermer. So Steve Hibicki actually showed me how he did that reverse tail when Sway Lee came in, that girl is a real crowd pleaser. With that part, he told me it was the outboard gear for the reverb, and he reversed the tail. And that's actually, I saw him do that for the Black Beatles remix with Nicki Minaj, because he had to do the song arrangement. He had to change it up because Mike Will, the reason he is one of the top producers, in my opinion, in the industry, because he's not going to settle for, well, honestly, I don't know how every producer in the industry, like Metro Boomin, Murder Beats, I don't know their work ethics, but I do know Mike Will's. So like Steve was telling me with Black Beatles, that was like over 30 different sessions. like all together, because one might be like one song arrangement, Sway Lee and Jimmy, and then it might switch Jimmy, Sway Lee, Gucci Mane, and then the hook might switch up, might put different effects in. But it took time to make a hit. It takes time to make a hit. A lot of people feel like, you know, you can do one take and then that's it. You got to think of it this way. If you really want to bring value to people, you got to take the time to put time into the value. Put time into the value. That's good. But I'm really serious, because a lot of people feel comfortable being where they are, which you shouldn't be. Okay? So now I'm talking about how to go out and network, right? So in my opinion, I'm very good at this. I'm good at getting with a venue owner, getting the venue fee taken out, getting a percentage at the door, percentage at the bar. That's a big thing, especially if you're a promoter. But I'm talking on the artist aspect. You know, when I talk more on to that, that might be another segment, another episode. But if you're an artist, the main person you really want to meet, they're up to 4 to 5 people you need to meet. So the venue owner, of course, because they own the venue. So you got to think of it this way. If they own a venue, they probably know other venue owners, especially in their same category. You know, when it comes to competition in your category, you got to figure out like who is your competition, right? So venue owner, promoters, because you got to think of it this way. If they promote in one venue, they got multiple venues they promoting at. So if you're an artist and you try to perform at different venues, get with the promoter. The bartender, the reason why you want to get connected with the bartender, because they know the feel of the venue. They know the feel of the vibe, what's a popular song there. They're there for every event. So that's another person. The host, just like the promoter, they go to different venues, but they have mic control. They understand the crowd. If you're a good host, you can take over. And then the last person, the DJ. So that's a big person. So the DJ is the person who they control the scene. They control it with the music. They control it with the vibe of what they're performing. But you got to think of it this way. If you're a DJ, right? If you play the wrong song, you kill the whole vibe of the whole night. And then they're going to be booing you and whatnot. But the DJ has the power to like set the tone. So that's why I say link up with a DJ, a promoter, venue owner, bartender, and host, right? And from there, it'll be easy for you to go to different venues, network. And a lot of people ask me, what's the first thing you got to do? Like, I don't know exactly what steps I need to do. So I'll make it simple. Soon as you walk into the door, before you even walk into the door, the bouncer, make them your friend. Of course, they're going to pat you down. You know, you got to pay to get in. You say, hey, thank you for making sure we're safe here. You know, have a safe night. You know, make small talk. You know, some bouncers don't really link you up with that. But you'd be surprised, because when they see you next time, they'll be like, oh, man, he cool. Because, you know, bouncers are, you know, there to work. But there's nothing wrong with talking to a bouncer, because they might be bouncing at different venues too. So small talks can go a long way. So as soon as you walk into the venue, of course, you're going to get a drink at the bar. So you can ask the bartender what's a popular drink or what's a popular night at the venue, right? Or you can even ask the bartender question, is the owner here, or who's the promoter tonight, or who's the DJ tonight? They shouldn't have a problem, especially if you asking. A lot of people get nervous on asking people, you know, questions they want to have answered. Like with me, life is short. If you want to answer, you got to ask. Okay, don't just be in the venue, because I see a lot of artists not talking to anybody with their own clique, sitting in the corner, they perform, and they walk out. And that is disappointing. The reason why I say that, you're not linking up with the promoter, you're not shouting out the promoter or the DJ, dapping the DJ who's making sure your levels are right, not linking up with the venue owner saying, you know, thank you for performing that night, or the host, you know, thank you for like presenting me on the stage. Or even the bartender. Like, artists really needs to think of it this way. When you're on stage, you got to say, hey, if you don't have a drink, go ahead and go to the bar. You know, shout out to the bartender. Make sure you tip. You know, a lot of promoters, no, a lot of hosts do that. So that's another thing to think about. When it comes to, you know, the artists, I feel like an artist needs to do more, especially if they want to engage and do more shows, because venue owners, hosts, DJs, all that, they do not mind having the artist there performing, especially if they're going to bring them more value, more of a push, because it's all about who you know. And that's a good way to link up. First, link up with the bouncer, then the bartender, and then you meet everybody else slowly but surely. One of my favorite venues of all time is the Union. The reason why, because not just because I know the venue owner or the bartenders or everybody in the venue, it was like my first mixtape release when I released I Tried in 2013. I used to be an artist. Matter of fact, I might do a release of the project just to like have people to understand like my mindset back then, the music I was into. And you never know, because there's artists who release projects in 2019, they recorded in 2015, 16. A lot of people thinking like, oh, you released something this year and it's supposed to come out now. No, being an artist, it takes patience. Like Prince, rest in peace, Prince. He has music that he recorded years ago that's still not released. When you have a fan base and value, people are gonna stick to you no matter what. So you gotta think of it that way, right? So go ahead and figure out exactly what you want to do, especially if you want to perform in venues. Don't just do open mics. Like open mic is a good start, but you got to think of it this way. If you're doing open mics, everybody around you doing open mic, you only on a tier, right? If you're doing open mic and you try to get paid to do shows, like matter of fact, getting paid to do shows and open mics, to get to like halfway. If you're doing open mic, link up with all the people who I just named there. All right. And as time goes by, from all the networks that you build, from the DJ to the owners to the host to the bouncer to the bartender, it's only a matter of time until you get paid for what you do. And I'm speaking on facts. So the next one is Pour Up Sip. Shout out to Pour Up Sip, the CEO of the Hit Syndicate. He's a dope producer. Shout out because his recent credit was with Lil Yachty, I remember. So with Pour Up Sip, of course, he's an engineer / producer. Some of his credits: Lil Yachty, Boosie Badass, Scrappy, DJ Unk, Cat on the Move. I actually met him through Cat's event at I'm trying to remember what venue it was, but DJ Wade was DJing the event, and that's when I met Cat and Sip. And after meeting Sip, I could tell like he was a talented producer, engineer. Like his production is crazy. His mindset when he mixes and produce, like I'm more intrigued of his production. His mix is dope, but his production is on point. It's outside the barrier, because you know how you can link up with a producer and they have like the same pattern? Not him. I've known him I've known Sip for at least 2 or 3 years now, and just that time I just learn like he's a very humble person. He's always willing to spread knowledge. Like I like to link myself with people who actually don't mind like giving value, because you meet some people who feel like they're above everybody, and those people are staying at their same spot. So you never want to be the person who just feel comfortable to just, take advantage of people saying like, oh, I can do whatever because, I have these much credits. Like I have credits too, but the thing is, a lot of people don't know it because I don't really want to like spread it out like that, because I'm blessed with what I've learned, but it's not going to make me a better person just telling you that, you need to, treat me with a different amount of respect, which is wrong, right? So always take time to, spread your knowledge, help the person next to you, and doing what you can, especially if you're feeling like the next generation is going to be better, right? So from taking the time to learn new equipment, to taking the time to understand the venue you're working at, to understand where you're trying to go into the future, take the time, understand yourself, and move forward. So this is Ray of Rebel Ears. I want to thank everybody for listening to the podcast and on YouTube and all social media. Keep tuning in.